They always said Elizabeth was born old. She liked old things and old places and old people. They had memories. One of the most cherished of these old things was a leather overnight bag with a big zipper that her grandmother had bought her from the flea market shortly before she died. Elizabeth had taken it to Boston, but somewhere on the way back from the bus stop, the zipper had broken. That was not a tragedy in and of itself, but the loss of her keys was. She started to retrace her steps along the dark road with the widely spaced street lamps. "Can I help you?" asked a man. He was very handsome, slight, smaller even than Elizabeth, though he held himself as though he was tall. Maybe it was because he smelled like old paper, old leather, like the table at the antique store, piled with bakelite and old costume jewelry, that Elizabeth trusted him. She began to tell him about how she'd bought this bag with her grandmother, how the snow had squeezed through the cleats of her boots, how silver bells had played from the store, and how her grandmother had smelled like Prel. Looking at the bag, he said something about it not being very practical, and she admitted that it wasn't. "You are a sentimentalist," the man had said. "You crave memories." Then he opened up his hand, showing her the new keys attached to another much older one. "Is this what you were looking for?" he asked. She hadn't remembered him bending over to get it. And that's when she woke up. When she turned toward the clock, her neck hurt. She saw that her clock had stopped. It was an old traveling type that folded into an aquamarine case. It probably needed to be rewound. As she touched it, she held the memories that flooded in her hands. A girl younger than she was putting it in her suitcase and traveling to Europe to take classes and draw cathedrals, and then to come back to someplace snowy and marry well and divorce badly. She dropped it like it burned and rubbed her fingers over the quilt, but it wasn't new either. It was made from fabric saved by women who had seen children go to war and die in mining accidents and had taken the remnants of their lives and sewn them into something whole. Elizabeth started to shake. "You are a sentimentalist," the dream man said again, except this time it was so real it sounded like it was coming from inside the room. "You crave memories." He stood up from the chair where he had been sitting so still that he was nearly invisible. He didn't walk, just slid over toward her bed, his parchment hand stretched out towards her. "Take mine, dear Elizabeth," he pleaded. And maybe it was because he smelled like old paper, old leather, like that table at the antique store piled with bakelite and old costume jewelry, that Elizabeth trusted him. And she touched him and was flooded with his memories. So many of them, starting from the time when he was a tall man at a small wooden house at the forest's edge, and going straight through to when he was a small man on a dimly lit street in Plattsburgh, opening the throat of a sentimentalist with his glowing white fangs. Tentatively, Elizabeth touched her own fangs, scraping against the unblunted tips. As the years went by, Elizabeth drained young humans of blood and drained her dream man of thousands of years of unwanted memory. And they lived happily ever after.